Welcome back to the CEO Advantage podcast. Today, we've got a CEO from a really significant manufacturing background, Alf Ianniello, the CEO of Codan. Welcome to the CEO Advantage podcast.
Thanks, Paul. Nice being here.
Mate, we ask the same question of every CEO who comes on here as our first question, and that is, what was the first job you got paid for?
My first job was a paycheck to play soccer. At a very, must have been around 16. I got paid to play for Adelaide City. So I got, I think like maybe $120 in a little bag on a Thursday night. So
nice.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
So only our second ever guest to have a cool first job. I think Brent Riley was the only other one who said, "Oh, professional athlete." So, okay.
Yeah.
Everybody else had crummy first jobs. You had a really good one. So did you want to be a professional soccer player when you finished school, or did you have an idea that you would be a CEO? Let's go back to 16-year-old Alf, paid to play sport. What was your vision for yourself back then?
I never thought I was going to be a professional sportsman because I knew inherently I wasn't good enough to be a professional sportsman. I would get to a level, but that level wouldn't create, a job that I thought was good enough to create a living. So and to be fair, coming from a family of people that come from Italy, they're not really endorsing their child to be a professional sportsman. They're endorsing their child to go to university or get a trade. So that was the headspace at the time.
Yeah. So where did you go? University or a trade?
I went to university. Yeah. Not a very good student, to be fair. Wanted to drop out. And then my father said, I want you to stay in there. A group of friends who had dropped out in year 10, who are still my friends, they really forced me to complete university. And here I am today.
So what did you study?
I did electronics engineering.
Right.
Yeah. So great course, quite in depth, quite mathematical. All the stuff I hated then, I really enjoy now and see the benefit of, especially when you're trying to run a tech business.
Yeah. Electronics engineering today would be even more valuable skill set than back then. And then it was the internet was coming out, and it was technology was really accelerating. But how is that? Would you recommend that as a career pathway to a young fella now?
If I had my time again, I'll become a mathematician.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess that gets you into investment banking, gets you into AI. It gets you to really discover at first principles how things come together.
Yeah.
And because I think business is just one big polynomial equation with different variables that you need to manage. That's how I manage it. So, so that would be my advice. I haven't given that advice to my children. I've told them to get into banking or commerce or finance.
Why? Why would you tell them to get into that?
Engineering's really hard to sort of come up the ranks. And you've got to do a lot of hard yards. So if you have leadership ambitions to run organisations and sizable and international organisations, I think it's very hard doing it through the engineering stream.
Yep. So tell us how you went through those hard yards of following an engineering stream into what was your first CEO?
My first CEO gig was the CEO of Schefenacker Vision Systems down at Lonsdale.
Right.
And I did come through the engineering arm and a little bit of BD, but in reality, I got my degree, went to British Aerospace, right, and did a 4-year sort of coming through the graduate program. I just don't know how I got in the graduate program. Some of the guys I was with they were so smart and intelligent, and I could grasp the concepts, but I found it really difficult. But what I had people skills. I understand the commerciality a bit more, and I worked bloody hard. So I would outwork everybody to actually make up for my sort of intellectual deficiency in electronics. So,
and have you found that throughout your career that you can outwork most of the people around you?
From a sheer commitment of spending time doing work, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that. Great learning, exposure to great tech, great people, smart people. And then I got into a BD sort of role and sort of started trying to do business development, or not really business development, like technical advisory of the kit to foreign businesses. And then a job came up at the old Rainsfords, Britax Rainsfords, and I went to the US and I became a customer engineer of all things. So I was probably, at that point in time, I had more skill than required to be a customer engineer because we were just selling mirrors into the US, into the Ford system. Then they set up a branch office and they had a US manager and he got fired. And Brian Freeborn and Steve Noon, they came over. Brian was a managing director of Schefenacker Australia, and he came over and he said, this kid's got some skill. So on the way home, they decided to give me a go. And I became the branch manager, and I was quite young, really, really young.
How old's really, really young?
I must have been around, I would say 26. Yeah. So I was running the branch office, and most of our sales from this plant in Lonsdale were going out to the US. Then came home to be the engineering director of Schefenacker Australia, then became the engineering director of Schefenacker Global. So every engineering centre that Schefenacker had, there would have been around 10, and they gave it to this Australian kid. And if for people that understand the German hierarchy, an engineering director needs to be sort of probably what I look like now, a bit old, fat, So I used to go to meetings. That's what I was, a tea boy or the coffee, So, and it was very humbling. Most days I felt completely inadequate in doing the role, completely out of your comfort zone. And then I came home and got offered the job as the GM or managing director of Schefenacker Australia. So that was 2 factories, one in Lonsdale and one in Taree, around 1,000 people collectively. And then
How old were you then when you were in charge of 1,000 people?
Around 28.
28?
Yeah, 28, 29, something like that. And then probably 3 years later, I got a phone call from a board member from the Detmold Group. Met Rodney. We hit it off and spent 14 years working there for another great South Australian company.
Yeah.
The key thing, I've worked for 3 great South Australian companies. The Britax became Schefenacker, the Detmold Group still there, and now Codan. So,
remarkable journey. Tell me, as a 28-year-old, most of the people reporting to you are older than you. Some of them more experienced than you, may not be smarter than you or work harder than you.
Yeah.
I guess not everybody is wishing you well because you've sort of skipped over lots of people who've got more miles on the clock than you had at the time. And you talked about that sort of feeling inadequate. And imposter syndrome is such a real factor, right?
Yeah.
But as a 28-year-old with 1,000 people older than you and as you say, in that German hierarchy of things where, if you're not a Meister, then what the heck are you going to teach me? What advice now, the older Alf looking back, what advice would you give 28-year-old Alf in that role, having had success so quickly, so young?
I think the advice is you don't have to work overtime to prove yourself. You do need to learn to listen. So, 2 ears, 1 mouth in that order, that whole, that's really important. Be highly respectful. So the real basics of relationships, listen, be respectful, not be a pushover, right? I would say if I look back at when I was 28, probably to my late 30s, pretty aggressive management style, high momentum, push. You look back today, maybe sometimes we pushed a bit too hard and you didn't have to, right? So, and the key thing, I remember when I got promoted to the engineering director role at Britax, 2 senior guys left the same day out of, just they thought they should have got it instead of this young kid.
Yeah.
But, I think just be objective. It's really okay to feel inadequate, right? As long as you create that inadequate feeling creates some positive outlook. Now, it's a total contrast to what I've just said, but I still feel inadequate today, and I've been a CEO for a long, long time. It's only because you're trying to always better the current state. Mm-hmm. And so you're always fearful of the unknown. So I'm going to make that decision. It's not a normal decision. So I'm a little bit fearful. That's fine. So if I go back to when I was 28, it was okay to be fearful. It's okay to make a mistake. Keep listening, keep treating people respectfully. Put in those extra sort of yards that sometimes when people are in their 40s or 50s think, you know what, I don't really have to go in on a Saturday to watch the launch of this product. They've got it under control. And then so when you rock up there on a Saturday morning, say, oh, you guys want a coffee? You can add zero value to this, but they know this senior person is sitting there and he's showing support, right? Yep. So I guess it's the same thing. Show support, listen, just try and be yourself.
There's a lot to be said for the power of humility in leadership.
Yeah.
And in many cases, there's an astonishing lack of humility. But I think one of the conversations that I seem to be having a lot of around at the moment with so much uncertainty around the place. I've played this word game with a couple of CEs the other day and said, in one word, I'm going to give you one word, you give me the opposite word. And 100% of the time they get it wrong.
Yeah.
If you're feeling brave, I'll do it to you because but I said to them, in one word, what's the opposite word to uncertainty?
Certainty.
Yeah. People instinctively say certainty. Then if we pause for a second and thought, is it really? Should in an uncertain environment, should you lean into being certain about things? You'd go, no. Absolutely. In fact, the reverse of that, we should be adaptive. I should be curious. I should be really listening. I should be really humble because in uncertainty, I don't know where things are coming from.
Yeah.
So I need people to talk to me. If I'm one of those bombastic, dogmatic CEOs, I'm actually going to be in more trouble.
That's right.
In uncertain circumstances.
Yeah.
How have you managed being? I mean, manufacturing is a tough environment as well, full of very sometimes dogmatic people. Sometimes dealing with engineers who are certain. They're very black and white.
Yeah.
But leading engineers and leading in manufacturing, where, as you know, as a leader, most things are not black and white. How have you managed that tension that exists between certainty and flexibility, and living in that for so long and being successful at it?
The interesting thing with engineering, manufacturing, there is a definite output.
Yep.
Right. And with business, there are budgets and cash flows and P&Ls to hit. So you need to pull everybody up because in manufacturing and engineering, there are significant levels. And if people don't understand the alignment from level 0 to level 10, where just say, I sit at a level 10 and the shop floor is a level 0, we could have a discussion on something, but you always need to bring it back to the greater good. So for an engineer, I want to do A, B, C, and D. Fine. Does it meet the functionality and the cost targets? No. Well, we need to have a discussion. We could have the best tech on earth, but if we can't sell it, we haven't got a business.
Yeah.
So, with manufacturing, quality, the ability to make things at rate, these are definite measures. So I always pull something back to the best outcome for the business.
Mm-hmm.
So I always had a comment, when we agree to disagree in an organisation, there's only two things to ask yourself to take it away from you and I, is what's the right thing for the customer and what's the right thing for the business. If you get two affirmatives there, then we're going to move on.
Yep.
Right. And that's really it. And you've got to take the ego out of this. And it's fine everyone having a strong opinion, right? It's fine people listening, and it's fine to that constructive debate can be quite powerful. But at the point in time, you've got to draw the line and say, well, does it actually match what we're trying to do as an organisation or as a department? So this thing can be filtered down to multiple levels. It doesn't have to just sit at the top level. So that's always been my approach,
In my 25 years as a CEO, one of the hardest things to find was a consulting and advisory firm where they'd actually been CEOs. I created CEO Advantage to be the advisory firm I was looking for. Go to ceoadvantage.com.au and find out how we can help you and your team be the best in the business. What happens when it doesn't work? So, for example, in an engineering world, like, I don't care what you designed it for. What does it do? Or who does it serve? Is that sort of whether they're engineers or scientists or whether they're social science people, there are people who are such subject matter experts that the beauty of their work they feel is corrupted by commerce or corrupted by customers using it. That's not what I designed it for. How do you manage where you've got a really clever subject matter expert that you're trying to have this conversation with around who does it serve, our customers or the business, who won't come along, but they're the main inventor, they're the main person, subject matter expert. How do you manage in that critical environment of, I can't lose them, but they won't come along?
The debate just gets larger. The inputs into the debates get a bit more complicated. And, there may be an element of compromise, but, and maybe, on the other fact, you say, okay, we're going to give it a go. We'll give your suggestion a go for a couple of weeks and see, we'll test it. We'll test the theory. Maybe our theory is wrong. There's nothing wrong with testing a theory, right? But there's got to be a conclusion at a point in time. Everything's got bookends in my view.
Yep.
Things cannot just continue to evolve over time. There needs to bookend. So I'm happy to test the theory, but the theory will be tested with some constraints around it to make sure we're going to conclude to the right decision at the end. Yeah.
So you've got 1,000 people. You're the boss of Schefenacker in Australia, and an opportunity comes to shift to Detmold. Tell me how it, for our viewers outside of South Australia, in this community in South Australia, you can't, as a CEO, it takes 2 minutes if you're going to move. It takes about 2 minutes for anybody to find out that you're either leaving or you're starting somewhere. So tell me, how did you move from Schefenacker to Detmold? What conversation happened? Well,
I got a phone call from a director at a board member at Detmold. Said, Rodney is looking at expanding. He's looking at taking a step back. And people that know Rodney would know he never takes a step back.
Yeah.
So, and I just went to have a coffee with Rodney, and I said to Rodney, I've got multiple things to finish at Schefenacker. I probably won't be available for 9 to 12 months. And he said, that's fine. We'll keep having coffee every month for the next 9 to 12 months. And we did. And we created a pretty decent rapport. And I thought I could learn a lot. Obviously, Detmold is a significant global operation, which a lot of people don't appreciate how large they are.
Give us an idea of what people are touching Detmold product.
Daily.
Daily. Can
Yeah.
you give us an idea of what some of those things are?
Yeah, so a lot of the product range would be in, the things that people would touch the most is the McDonald's packaging, the Hungry Jack's packaging, Subway, Porto, flour bags for Manildra sugar or for Manildra flour and some CSR sugar.
And during COVID,
the mask
masks.
products, something that Detmold had never made before. One of the greatest engineering projects I've been involved with, from a speed and technical perspective. Plants all over APAC, and but more importantly, working for an entrepreneur is something else. Their ability to think completely differently is they don't go from A to B. They go from A to Z, back to F, and back to B, because they got to get the solution that suits them. But they never say no. They never say no for an answer, and you need to get there. And that started a fantastic 14-year journey. And talk about feeling inadequate. Sitting with a bloke who'd run this thing for 50 years. Was just amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And I learned a lot of him. We're still very good friends today. And just a really smart handshake guy, old school guy, handshake. And that's what I learned.
So it's quite a different setup from Schefenacker and that way of working to working with an entrepreneur and a founder who's still there.
Yeah.
What did you learn? What would be the two things that you would say to anybody who's taking a CEO role, working with a founder who's saying they're going to step back but is still there?
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them?
My advice is very simple. This probably goes back to the Leo Coker days at Ford when someone said to him, figure out that's Ford on the front door, not Coker.
Yeah.
Right. So very simply, what I did was compliment Rodney, and he complimented me. So I say that I was probably the highest paid apprentice in Adelaide, probably for 3 or 4 years. And, we had the same work ethic. We had the same passion for the business. His passion was really around, packaging. I just loved it, and my passion was about growing and making great businesses, and collectively it was a strong team.
Yeah.
So if you are going to get employed by a founder, you're going to be part of a team. You're not going to be your outright CEO, right? You have a lot of responsibility because the entrepreneurs and the founders, there's a lot of stuff they don't like doing, right? Yeah. And if you're good at doing that, put your energies on where you're really good at, on complimenting the founder rather than trying to be the founder.
Yeah.
It's and
that's a common mistake in that founder-CEO relationship, isn't it? Where there's a mismatch of expectations around replacement.
Yeah.
That this new CEO is coming in to replace the founder, when that's never, ever going to happen, is it?
No, it's never going to happen. Usually, you're coming in to do things that the founder thinks he needs help with, expansion, growing a team, getting an executive team in place, putting a bit more governance in place, getting the financial systems right. There's a whole series of things that founders don't focus on. They're focusing on growing, right? So, you're there more as the safety net around that. And over time, you actually collate a lot of knowledge, and you actually start emulating some of the founders' sort of behaviours. And that's where you become really effective.
Yep.
So, we had a lot of fun. I've got to say. And it was a tough call when post-COVID, after doing the mask project, I thought, after that period of time, it was the right thing to do, to try and do. And I always wanted to run an ASX business.
Yeah.
So, that had always been at the back of my mind. And I was running out of time fundamentally, so I was probably around 47, 48 at the time. So,
yeah. So before we move on to Codan and running a publicly listed company, You talked about the mask project, and in organisations that are long established and are successful, there's a phenomena called the tyranny of success, which is almost not almost, becomes a codified way of working. This is how things work around here, and so innovation over time gets killed off, and the inertia and the way things are done around here is probably one of the most effective killers of innovation you can get, because it's so invisible. The innovation has to follow our DOA process, or it has to follow these rules. But as a startup, the startups around you don't have to follow those rules, so you're hamstringing it. If COVID hadn't happened, I mean, you guys pivoted to masks and a different kind of manufacturing on a dime as a big organisation where others didn't do that. What did you do that was different from others that allowed that innovation to happen so quickly, apart from the necessity and the opportunity, which is maybe once in a lifetime?
Yeah. I wouldn't, I don't think Detmold pivoted at the time, because our packaging business continued to flourish because of the Uber Eat phenomenon during COVID and stuff, right? So that continued to go well. I think what we did, we saw an opportunity and we said no twice to the opportunity, because the state government thought we could make masks on our equipment, and we said, no, this is completely new technology. What fundamentally enabled us to make the yes decision was that we had significant engineering and manufacturing in China, which is the epicenter of PPE. And so once the borders opened, we were able to have access to equipment that could go into our engineering centres and supply chains coming out. So Detmold's global footprint and the key people we had globally enabled us to execute that. Now, if you look internally, being an entrepreneurial business, it took us probably a day and a half to work out, what we need to do to make this financially successful. We had a board, so the board was questioning most things. And then we were able to, start bringing in the equipment, modify facilities. So I guess the ability to have an infrastructure of people, engineering centres, manufacturing centres that are global, we were able to really work. And then, we worked really well with the government, really well with the financial institutions. You talk about necessity. I've never seen such great teamwork between industry, government and financial institutions. The decisions were made very quickly.
Isn't it funny how we've seemed to have gone back? There was a time of great efficiency and great progress that we've sort of slipped back into.
Yeah, there wasn't time to debate if someone was wrong or right. And the sad thing is, then after you come out through COVID, you have all the Senate inquiries. Well, Detmold wasn't involved in Senate inquiries, but someone's trying to find a scapegoat somewhere. And this is the whole issue with our current systems. Everyone's looking for the scapegoat.
Yeah.
Well, let's just look for the great outcome, right? And sometimes, things aren't exactly right, but, the general outcome is good. So we set up that facility, 18 machines, I think, or more, 18 to 24 machines. The facility, pressure dry facility out in Brompton, 350 staff, 3 shifts, making L3s and P95s and working with the SA Health. And it was fantastic. Setting up test facilities so we could triangulate the results. It was good. And the other great thing was Detmold's got a lot of fantastic people. So you talk about organisations, you talk about entrepreneurial spirit, getting shit done really, that comes from Rodney.
Yeah.
Right. And then I had a lot of that too. So people just get on with it. And there's no room for political biases in these companies. You just and there's nowhere to hide if you're not delivering, especially when you're in packaging where the margins are skinny. right? So, there's a lot of things got to go right to make money. And that was the key thing. A lot of great people. And they're still making masks today, which is even a great story for South Australian or Australian manufacturing.
Yeah. How different is that Rodney's and yours and global mindset, particularly being a South Australian and living in South Australia and having your family here? There's not a lot of global companies who are thinking globally from here, but we do such great work and have such great workforce. What would you say is the key to your, so far, we haven't got to Codan yet, but so far your career success managing 2 global enterprises from Adelaide? What are some of the key elements that have allowed that to happen?
The world has so much to offer, either from a cultural perspective, a learning perspective, and a technology. And a lot of the times, a lot of that doesn't happen in Adelaide or Australia. We're very like-minded on approach. So when you run a global business, what's the first thing you learn? The way I talk to the Chinese is very different to the way I talk to the Singaporeans, or, that cultural element changes. So all of a sudden, you become very 360 in approach. Then you look at technology. Where's the epicenter of some of this tech? It's not Adelaide. People might want it to be Adelaide, but you are 0.001% of this market. So if you want to learn, you've got to go to where the best people are. My dad used to say to me, if you want to get better, you got to hang out with better people, right? If you want to be a good soccer player, you got to play with better people, right? And you don't always get that in Adelaide. So for some of the great success stories here, at a point in time, they've globalized. And to feel the heat of global pressure is really good for you. To know that somebody so once the internet happened and you could buy things online, it changed the protectionism for packaging. So you're not competing against the guy down the street. You're competing against a guy in China who can make the product 30% cheaper. That globalization just makes you better as an organization. So instead of complaining, good companies bring those lessons learned back and say, well, how do I take 30% out? And now I've got a supply chain competitive advantage, so I can supply in 4 weeks instead of 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So, it's just globalization and what you can learn, and to make you even better and better and better is that's the important thing about having an international lens. Now, you may never be an international player, but you can learn a lot. And in today's day, I really believe there's no borders anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're still you haven't moved to Codan yet, but you've got a global outlook. You're learning from the world. How much time are you spending outside of Australia?
A lot.
What's a lot?
Oh, on average, it would have been a week, a couple of weeks, a month, and some months I was home for the whole month. But one thing is really important if you're running global businesses, you don't run them from behind a desk. So when you're reading financials or you're reading reports, if I was reading a report at Detmold, I understood the machine that was making that product. And if I went there, I went to see the machine. So I would do a lot of shop floor, talk to the operators through an interpreter, or just sort of grin and hold the product. You do not run global organizations via Teams or behind a desk. You get out there and you talk to the customer, you talk to your people, you look at your facility.
How, as an individual, so leader of a business, dad, husband, member of a family, how do you stay in connection with all of the parts of your life when you're such a heavy road warrior.
Yeah, it's really prioritization. To be fair, if someone stood here and said, "Oh, I can allocate appropriate time to everything," I think it's never going to happen. But so it's prioritization. So in a lot of ways, my priority when I'm back in Australia is my family and my children, my wife and my kids. I've had elderly parents. I still have my mother. So I think that suffers over time because you're not always around in need, but got good family support there. I think the thing that's really probably lacked or I missed a lot on is probably in the friendship groups, because you're not, always available. And I did make a point, especially in those Detmold years, to be heavily involved in whatever my kids were doing, in sport and school. And, during that time I was the chair of Mercedes College, so I was still trying to be involved as much as I could. But, if you speak to my kids, they say that I'm never that far away, I'm always accessible. But you do, there is a sacrifice. I guess that's what I'm saying, and I've got a great wife that, she really holds the fort and, does everything. So I'm pretty sure if I didn't have that home base, this would have been a shit show a long time ago, to be fair. So, but, with friendships, they're good friendships, they're solid friendships. So, you just pick up where you left off, right? So that's great. And with the home life, I think the kids have come out all right, right? So, that's it. But it is all sacrifice. It's and prioritization.
I think it's undervalued. I know I was interviewed by someone about exactly that. How do you balance all of these different things? And the answer that just came naturally to me at the time was being a CEO in many cases is a lifestyle choice as much as a career choice. And my wife had to choose that lifestyle as well because it affects everyone. It affects her, it affects the kids. And I think lots of people have this idea of a glamorous lifestyle of, the rich and famous and what you're doing and all those sort of things. But it's an all-in thing with your family lives the job as much as you do, differently.
Yeah.
But you can see how if you don't have that family support, and I've seen it in other people in other organisations where they're not making great family choices, and you can see their career starting to blow apart without that.
Yeah.
Doesn't get mentioned as often as it should, I suspect.
Yeah, it's a 24/7, commitment.
Yeah.
And for all the, there's a lot of positives too. I feel the people that my children have met, international people or, great business people have also been, eye-opening for them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positives, but it is definitely a family choice, and there's a lot of positives with it, and there's a few negatives with it.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of the negatives probably come from misconceptions of, what people are thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little bit fortunate, I think, because, my mother now, but, my parents would never have understood what being a CEO of a business meant, right?
Yep.
So you're still going to their house and they're still saying, well, I think my dad was in his deathbed and I was still frightened of him, So, I come from a culture and a sort of a setup which always keeps you grounded, which has also been fantastic. Right. And, you pop in and have a beer at the Glen Hotel, people are going to treat you the same as you were when you were the kid at Paynham.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the good thing.
Yeah. So you've been 14 years at Detmold, but Detmold's still a family business.
Correct.
Moving to a publicly listed business, another iconic South Australian global business. What professional development had you done apart from the experience and the track record that you'd had? Did you do any more study or other dedicated professional development to learn how to run a publicly listed company versus a private company?
No. The only professional development I've done was while I was still at Detmold. I went to Wharton, business school at University of Penn. But going from Detmold to Codan, there was, apart from talking to people like Dave Simmons, who was the chair, and has been a long time mentor of mine. So Dave wrote me like a 15-point checklist of how you should tackle the job. And if I open my bag down there, that 15-point checklist is still in my folder, which is just a good reflection tool.
Excellent. So how did that happen? How did 14 years, close relationship with Rodney, no reason to really leave?
I think it was just for me, so there was a 12-month time off period. So I was on didn't do too much for 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously some dialogue was happened with Codan at a period of time. So it wasn't like bang, bang, right? So,
Did you know in that 12 months that you were going to Codan, or were you?
At a point in time I did, but previous to that I had other job offers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just being a bit more selective, and I really wanted to work with an ASX business.
Mm-hmm.
So some other large South Australian family businesses reached out, because obviously they thought I'd created a bit of a niche for myself, but I wasn't really interested in doing that anymore. And then the opportunity came up, and you have to obviously go through talk to the current board, and they got to feel comfortable, and that was it.
So for our viewers and listeners, what is Codan?
So Codan's a ASX listed business. It's really a technology business split into 3 divisions. One is a metal detection business, one is a public safety business called Zetron, and one is a tactical communication business called DTC. So it's really 3 businesses in one. But the way we report it is metal detection and communications fundamentally. I think what we do extremely well, create IP and commercialise IP. So best gold detectors in the world to the artisanal miners in Africa and wherever you can find gold. We sell our hardware and software into 911 call centres into North America. So we're in a third of those. We use the same technology for the Metro Police in the UK. A third of the police there use it. And then we do great communication products. So a lot of our radios go into drones, which is an emerging market at the moment. Yeah.
There was a big announcement from the federal government this morning about the increase in the expenditure on drones.
Yeah.
So another global role, this time now with even more scrutiny. How much time are you on a plane now?
Funnily enough, Codan's less global than Detmold. I think one of the skill sets I brought to Codan was the globalisation of Codan, because fairly much it was a Mawson Lakes kind of business, and fairly much it was a mine lab business.
Yep.
So I spend actually more time away from home today, because over the last 5 years, we've moved from 300 people to 1,000 people through acquisitions, and all those acquisitions have been in the Northern Hemisphere. So my 3 executives that run each of those divisions are all based overseas. So it makes no sense for them to travel to Australia. It's just a waste of time. It makes more sense for me to be there and, visit customers, look at potential other acquisitions, or spend time with the management teams.
Where people who've been successful managers often fail by the time they become an executive is their inability to not touch things. So to delegate and to let people run things. What have you learned about creating an exec team and watching their delegation skills? Because you're clearly very good at it. But what are some of the skills, and what are some of the advice that you would give a successful doer who's now not allowed to touch things but has to make things happen?
Yeah, I think what people don't do to start with when they make the move up, they don't actually spend some time reviewing what that role should be doing compared to the previous role. And then there's always going to be a grey area. So you just need to continually ensure that you're not dipping into your old role. And you got to continually also have governance mechanisms. Like I was having this discussion the other day with a senior person at Codan who's really come through the ranks. And I said, show me how your 12 months look. Show me how your quarter looks. Show me how your month looks. Show me how your week looks. Right? And then you start understanding the cadence and your touch points with your managers. And then you start understanding, what is involved in the touch points. See, this is not free flowing, right? This is orchestrated and planned. And for different people, some people, as they go up, really gravitate to the sort of the macro. Some people still need a little bit of micro, but you got to let it go because otherwise you're not doing your job that we're paying you for. And that's what I keep saying to the guys. Actually, I pay you to do this job, not what you did before. So, and I effectively have work. I work with them. So I say, this is how I manage my time. Well, here's my 12-month calendar. A 12-month calendar? Yeah, I've got a 12-month calendar. Everything's in there. I don't run it. So it's really the art of learning how to govern and the questions you need to ask. So, how many open roles you've got? And they'll say 10. You only need to talk about the critical ones at that level. You don't need to talk about the whole 10.
Yeah.
It's just that sort of distilling the thinking. But it takes time. I think if you're taking a manager from within the ranks and promoting to exec, I think it's around 2 to 3 years before they actually get it. And as the CEO, you need to spend time and make them effective in that role. Don't just sort of say, here you go, here's the keys to the office and off you go. No, just, spend some time, talk to them and know when to jump in and know when to sort of just give a bit of advice.
Isn't that, we've been talking quite a bit about the two most valuable assets that a CEO can have, and that is trust, because you can't do anything if no one trusts you and you don't trust them. But this other element of time, and you've talked about it beautifully around managing it, orchestrating it, but also giving time to things. But also, and included in that is giving time to let people stop doing what they used to do so they can do something new.
Yeah.
I see a lot of, though, workplaces, whether it's in government, outside of government, in not-for-profit and for-profit organisations, where everybody seems to be smashing through their day. You go, how are you going? I'm busy, as if busy is a good thing. But it's mindless. And you're talking about a different use of time. Not how do you manage allocating enough time with also being urgent?
It's all. I think the underlying premise it's not urgent. You just need to have momentum. And momentum changes, right? Sometimes there's a lot of momentum and that rate of momentum is at this speed. And sometimes it's just momentum that just keeps things rolling forward. Activity does not equal productivity. People think, I'm busy. Yeah, but you might be busy doing things that add zero value to what we're trying to achieve as an organisation. That's the art. So, the real art is saying, I know you got activity, but the activity is linked to great outcomes. And when you do that, the power of achievement, just people think, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Look what we've done. We've done all this work, but look at the outcome. The real discouragement is we've done all this work and we've got nowhere.
Yeah.
And time is valuable. Time is valuable. And, it's got to be, and it's not all, I don't want to sit here saying, I manage my time perfectly, but all I'm saying is you just got to have the ability to, give the time. One of my biggest failings as an executive, as a person in general, is my attention span is very small. So I would be at dinner parties, my wife's just kicking me on the table, say, can you just listen to the guy who's been talking to you, right? Right. But if there's enough going on and I know I need to be fully committed for that period of time, I will be, right? So, but, people get so caught up in the activity. I've got 25 things on my to-do list. Well, probably half of them you don't need.
Yeah.
So.
How important is it for the CEO to be a good storyteller and to be able to both tell a story about future success, but also to tell stories that are reflections of past success? It's often very successful founders and very successful CEOs are sometimes insatiable. They're always on the next thing, the next thing, and don't pause long enough to go, well done, everybody, or that was a win, or even to flow with the ebb and flow of business. As you say, momentum, sometimes you're rolling with it. Other times it's rolling against you with the ebb and flow of business. How important, though, is it for the CEO to be a good and contextual storyteller?
It is important. I would say out of 10, I'm probably a 4.
Interesting.
Right. I'm not a very good storyteller. I'm more the latter guy you mentioned. We've accomplished A, B, C, and D. It's great. And we move forward. Right. Probably a failing, I would suggest. So I actually, try and put enough mechanisms in place in comms around the business so people are informed. And I do have more formal elements to communicate, but it's not my forte, right? So I'm more the CEO that says, paints the macro picture, the strategy. Guys, I think there's a lot of sense if we do this. Then we get there, spend a bit of time sort of celebrating, then move on to the next milestone. I'm not the CEO that will, talk for a long, long time. It's a bit of a running joke at work. If they say, if you get an email more than 3 sentences from mouth, it's probably a spam.
You can tell.
You can tell. So, it's not my forte. I'm not saying, I know great storytellers, like the previous CEO of Codan, Donald Kirk, which most people in Adelaide would know. Amazing storyteller, but just not my style, right? I'm more, getting, building, making things better and moving to the next step.
Running a global organisation means that you're sometimes affected by global events. And currently we seem to be going through a crazy global event over in the Middle East. How did those sort of current events feature? You're running a public listed company, you've got shareholders, you've got shareholder meetings and all of these different things. But now you've got this variable where, shareholders say, Alf, we want certainty. You've done this forecast and you've got to meet these quarterly forecasts and all of that sort of stuff. But equally, you're affected by something that's completely out of your control. Is that a hard balancing act, or have you got that down pat? What happens there?
It's hard. The key, I think these macro issues and these global, macro geopolitical issues or just macro global trends that occur in the public world, you still get as affected as an ASX. But in the ASX world, you get swept up. So the ASX is having a bad day, you're going to have a bad day. Right? So the ASX is down, you will be down, irrespective of if Codan's trading good, bad or indifferent. There are a lot of global there are a lot of ASX governance rules that if you're actually going to not hit, you got to tell, right? So, first thing in the morning, AFR, second thing in the morning, The Economist, third meeting, The Australian, right? Just trying to understand, is anything happening here that may impact us? So when I first started at Codan, the Ukraine war hit not long after, probably 6 months later. And then, Sudan went into a civil war. You lost $100 million of sales, the share price tanked.
Wow.
And then the Ukrainians, the Russians had sort of taken the gold. They couldn't get their hands on cash, so they were going into Sudan to take the gold. So all these things, you think, how do they all join together? So all these events that aren't happening in our sort of, here, but really had a major impact on Codan at the time. And, you just got to try and join the dots.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I probably do more reading on global issues today than I did when I was at Detmold. That is a significant change. Spend more time talking to like economists on their views of life today and in the future. Again, sort of just trying to feed yourself with all this knowledge. Even when you travel, when we do investor roadshows, we meet some amazing analysts and bankers. And they just, I learn as much from them as they do from me on Codan, it's...
So you're leaning into as well, a world with when you're publicly listed as well, where sentiment has as much to do with logic, or as far as it being influential, but the sentiment sometimes has no logic to it at all. There's, you could be trading really well, you could be in a really growth industry, but the sentiment's gone against you and your share price goes down.
And we've seen that with the SaaS businesses lately. They've all been smashed.
Yeah.
So it's definitely on the ASX, you can get overreactions in a positive and a negative way. And it's a real people game. They really, people invest in the leadership. So you mentioned before the biggest thing about going private to public. When you make that move, nobody knows who you are. And that is a big deal because they're sitting there waiting for 18 to 24 months before they trust you.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to have half after half after half of delivery before they think, I think Alf has got it.
Plus you've inherited those halves before they know you from someone else.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's a really interesting thing. So it's probably less about sentiment. It's more about the investment community trusting you, trusting that if you say you're going to do something, you're going to deliver. So being on the ASX, you fundamentally, whatever you say and you deliver on it, tick. As soon as you miss one thing that you've said, that's when they don't like it. Whether you can control it or not.
Yeah, right. The old saying of "it's lonely at the top" rings true a lot for CEs, particularly where you're alone with certain decisions where you can't talk to the chair and you can't talk down. And you're also traveling a lot. How do you connect with peers, or how important is it for you to connect with peers or people like you? Who are running organisations like you?
Yeah, it is. It is important. To be fair, I don't do a lot of it. Most people would tell you trying to get a lunch or a dinner. Like I said, quality of time. I'm very particular. But in my time at Codan, I've actually sort of picked 3 or 4 people that I had never met really. And they're people I can sort of bounce things off. And then there's, mentors I've had in Adelaide for a long, long time, which I still pick up the phone and talk to. When I did join Codan at the time, understanding the move to the ASX, I did actually team up with a coach from ex-ASX world.
Yeah.
And so if you want to pick up a phone and, you can have a general chat about things as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's been a tough day. You're like, people have been at you and it hasn't gone your way. So you're in a pretty bad mood, but heading home, what song can come on the radio, no matter what bad mood you're in, that'll bring a smile to your face before you walk in the door?
People might be surprised, but I'm a bit of a Rammstein fan. So anything from the Rammstein, I listened to one track, they're live in Paris from 2016. So they got some really good intro music on that. So I put that on, and just listen to that, after that 20-minute drive from Mawson Lakes back home. By the time I get home, I'm usually okay. But, that tends to do it. But you know what? very rarely, in this game, some of this stuff you got to let go through to the keeper, right?
Yeah.
It's always for the end game, right? What you're trying to achieve in the future. So all these one-offs, sometimes I just let it go through the keeper and not worry about it, and you just sort of, move on.
Alf Ianniello, it's been fantastic having you here. That's a really fast hour, great conversation. Thank you very much for being part of CEO Advantage podcast.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.